This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. Liverpool take a big step to the title with a nervy win in the Merseyside derby at Anfield. Jota with the only goal. Should it have stood? Luis Diaz in an offside position. The ball's passed to him, but he's not interfering. Correct call, bad law. If you thought Tarkowski connected well with that volley in the reverse fixture, that's nothing compared to how he caught Alexis McAllister in the first half. A challenge from the 1980s. In the race for fifth place, a big win for Villa at Brighton. Jack Grealish gets a rare start and a rare goal for Man City. While if Sandro Tonali meant that, then perhaps football is complete. Also today, the best team in the world, Bournemouth's bad run continues. Have Ipswich given themselves a glimmer of hope? While, open brackets, yet more, close brackets, heartbreak for Southampton, conceding a last-minute equaliser against Palace. We'll look ahead to the weekend's games. Jose's gone all cute dad and pretended to steal someone's nose, or something like that. We'll get German corrections, answer your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hi, Max.
Hello, Jonathan Wilson.
Morning, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. And welcome, Dan Bardell.
A very good morning to you, Max.
Mark says, how long before Trump imposes tariffs on foreign podcasts? We don't know, but we love our US listeners, and hopefully you don't have to be charged, I don't know, or pay 20% or whatever it is to listen to this in the near future. Let's start at Anfield. Liverpool 1, Everton 0. Really important win for Liverpool, back to 12 points clear of Arsenal with 8 games to go. Did feel like a big step towards the title that they've already won, Barry.
Yeah, we've been saying for a long time that the title is a done deal, but I think if Liverpool had lost this game, it would have been their 5th consecutive poor performance or defeat, and the gap would have been 9 points. Arsenal still have to go to Anfield, so that theoretically could make the gap 6, maybe nervy times for Liverpool. So this win, you would imagine, will steady any nerves. I think they only need 13 points now from the last 8 games to guarantee the title. That's unlikely to be a problem for them. I wouldn't say this was a straightforward win. Everton came with a plan to just pack their defence and hoy long balls towards Beto, and it nearly worked because he had 1 goal ruled out for a very tight outside, and he hit the post with a shot that he should have scored with. But ultimately, it was a fairly comfortable win for Liverpool, I think.
The goal, and there were 2 big moments in this game, Wilson, 2 big decisions where sort of Paul Tierney clearly wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to the match in the VAR room, as far as I could tell. The offside, the ball is passed to Luis Diaz. He is in an offside position. He doesn't make a move for the ball. Tarkowski plays it. Now, I understand people saying that it's the correct decision by the laws, but it seems so daft that is the law of football. Because Tarkowski, okay, he shouldn't be on the pitch, but he is there. Is so affected by the fact that Luis Diaz is in his vicinity. He would do something different if there was no player near him.
Yeah, absolutely. As to what the actual law is, I'm pretty baffled. I seem to remember, Dan will probably remember this better than me, but wasn't there a not dissimilar incident with Tyrone Mings a couple of years ago, after which I thought they changed the guidelines so that was offside. But everybody last night seemed to be saying, no, under the law, this is correct. So maybe it is. Certainly there's a grey area there. You know, if you were writing the laws now, or if you're writing laws as they ought to be, that should be offside, because Diaz clearly gains an advantage. Tarkowski can't know that he's not going to move for it. He can't be certain he's offside. He does the right thing in trying to clear it. But that then presents the ball back to Liverpool in a dangerous area, and they score from it. So it's sort of morally offside, but maybe not legally offside.
And Moy said their goal is offside. There's no doubt about that. It's a mistake by the linesman or VAR or the referee, whoever you want to say. It's quite easy to read as well. It's not a difficult one if you ask me, but not surprised that decision at Anfield you don't get. Whereas Arne Slot did say, look, the rules were executed perfectly, but I feel frustration about the rule. I mean, does anyone disagree with Wilson's summary of that, Dan, or do you agree?
I mean, VAR had an awful night last night. Generally, I would say you've said it in the lead with this question, saying the ball has been passed to Luis Diaz. If the ball has been passed to Luis Diaz, how can he not be involved in play? That doesn't make sense, does it? It's another ludicrous decision, but it is the rule. So Slot was probably right with what he said.
And then the other one is the Tarkowski challenge on McAllister. I've sort of run through the decades, Barry. I've gone sort of 70s, 80s. That is viewed as a great challenge. In the 90s, it would be given as a free kick, but proper football men would complain about it being given as a free kick. 2000s, 2010s accepted as a foul. 2020s, definite red card. Do you share that sort of view of how that challenge, getting the ball and then crunching your opponent, would be viewed?
Yeah, I think you've done it very well there, actually. Everybody, like absolutely everybody, including Duncan Ferguson, who was no stranger to a bad tackle himself and is dyed in the wool Evertonian. Even Big Dunk agreed it should have been a straight red. And the only two people who seemed to think it wasn't worthy of a red card were the referee Sam Barrett and Paul Tierney. I can excuse Sam Barrett for not being quite sure in the heat of the moment. It's baffling that Paul Tierney didn't see it as a red. And we do know for a fact that Mike Dean has in the past, in his role as in Stockley Park, refused to get involved because he didn't want to undermine his mate. And I think this is another clear indication that VAR and refs need to be completely separate entities. Referees shouldn't be in charge of VAR.
The Premier League Match Centre on X said the referee's call of a yellow card for a reckless foul by Tarkowski was checked by the VAR with contact on the follow-through after Tarkowski had played the ball, deemed to be reckless. On the Premier League website, it states contact on foot only is typically considered reckless equals yellow card. I don't know what that means. High plus full plus forceful contact on ankle or above is considered dangerous equals red card. Well, that is clearly, I mean, it depends how high Alexis McAllister's ankles are, I guess, but it seemed well above the ankle to me. Anyway.
Sorry, Max, there was a third sort of contentious incident when Jordan Pickford leathered Darwin Núñez after the whistle had gone for Igor Boonen kick on Szoboszlai. So Szoboszlai got the foul, then Pickford clattered Núñez, which I think was also a red card offence. And I think the reason he wasn't penalised at all was because the free kick had already been given for the previous foul by his teammate. Now, Pickford has previously knacked Virgil van Dijk for the best part of a season with a foul that went unpunished because the ball had gone dead when he committed the foul, or before he committed the foul. And I thought at the time, again, there was a tweak so that in the rules, so that in future, if Jordan Pickford did this again, or anyone else, as he did last night, he could be punished for it. But it seems, again, not to have been applied. But yeah, last night, as Dan said, was not a good night for referees, really, or VARs.
Did anyone else notice that when, after the McAllister incident, Van Dijk went to speak to the referee and Pickford, who has already done what Barry said he's done, was telling Virgil van Dijk to calm down? I thought the audacity of that, having ended a season for Van Dijk previously, I thought that was absolutely outrageous from Jordan Pickford.
Wilson, what did you make of Liverpool's performance overall? It doesn't really matter, does it? They're not playing brilliant at the moment, but they did enough.
Yeah, it was fine. I think the second half they improved. Yeah, in the context of recent performances, it was another performance where they weren't at the top of their game. And from the point of view of wishing we had a bit of a title race, you just wish that Arsenal hadn't chucked away so many cheap points early in the season. I think if they were within 6 or 7 rather than 12, then Liverpool might still be anxious. The more anxious they are, the more likely they are to drop points, and the more fun the end of the season could be. And ideally, that game at Anfield, which was the third last game of the season, but Liverpool against Arsenal, you would have liked that to be almost a showdown. As it is, it's entirely possible that the title will all be wrapped up by then.
It's got real feelings of guard of honour. Should they do a guard of honour? There'll be lots of guard of honour chat, won't there, as Arsenal go to Anfield. And it is interesting up to a point, I guess, that their top players, Dan, aren't totally firing. Salah isn't, Van Dijk isn't. The way Van Dijk went challenged for Beto for that ball, it was sort of like a sort of how you can Street Fighter 2 kick, wasn't it? I know we sort of flew past the ball like a computer game.
I mean, we had Street Fighter in that incident, and then we had a Mortal Kombat from James Tarkowski as well, didn't we? I thought Beto
finish him.
I thought Beto in the first half. I thought he really ruffled Van Dijk. I thought Van Dijk had a really difficult time against him. Obviously, Beto had a goal disallowed. He had another shot off the post. I do wonder what would have happened in that game if Everton had have gone 1-0 up, because Liverpool weren't free flowing. They didn't play brilliantly. I thought Curtis Jones did okay at right back, but a lot of the big players for Liverpool had off nights again. Last night, Salah had a few quiet games in a row now. I mean, is the contract talk getting to him finally? I don't know, but they just haven't been the Liverpool they were at the start of the season. But they're doing enough to kind of get through the majority of games, and they will do more than enough to win the league. And they've only lost once all season, which is absolutely phenomenal, isn't it?
Sort of winning it like Liz McColgan would win the 10,000 metres, get a huge lead and then just sort of be exhausted, sort of flapping. Is that how McColgan won? I think it is. And, it'd be sort of flapping and tiring as, the Ethiopians would be catching, but she had such a big lead, it didn't matter. There's an analogy that will help everybody understand what has happened to Liverpool being really good and winning lots of games.
I think every time I come here, you do an analogy that goes completely over my head, and I don't know who the person is that you're talking about.
Let's go to the Amex. Brighton 0, Aston Villa 3. Really important win for Villa. I mean, I thought, Dan, you probably deserved it at the end, but that first half, both sides were going at it, penalty shouts, chances, and it didn't seem obvious at that stage that Villa would sort of walk away 3-0 winners.
No, it was a really good game. I watched 90 minutes of that game last night, and it was a really fun game. Obviously, I'm saying that as the supporter of the team that's won, but in the first half it was close. It was end to end. Both teams could have made something happen. I think Villa getting that goal just after half time, obviously that's a really good time to score, and it knocked Brighton back. Obviously, they've had 120 minutes the weekend before against Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup. They're probably still a little bit gutted about going out of that. And I thought Villa played in transition really, really well. They tactically, I think Emery picked the right team. We've got so many options now, but it really worked with Rashford playing as the number 9 and him drifting to the left, and then the 3 number 10s behind him all managed to just keep finding space and drifting into the space that he vacated. And all 3 goals came in similar fashions. I thought, given the context of the game, it was a huge game. Obviously, the Merseyside derby is the Merseyside derby, but that was a huge game in the context of the Premier League and the race for European qualification. And I thought Villa handled it really well. And Brighton had only lost 6 times before last night, so to go there and win, I thought it was probably Villa's best away result and arguably their best away performance of the season.
And Jonathan, an unbelievable January. To sign Asensio and Rashford, and Marlon as well scored then, but, Asensio to have 8 goals and 1 assist from 10 games and having only started 4 games. Rashford, 3 goals and 4 assists from 11 games, having only started 6. I don't know if that's just sheer brilliance from their recruitment or a bit of luck, but it's very rare that you bring 2 players in January who do so much.
Not at that level. I think you've seen it occasionally with teams in the relegation scrap who sign 4 or 5 and it makes a big difference. But to do that when you're sort of an upper mid-table, knocking on the door of a Champions League side, I think it's very, very difficult. I sort of feel slightly sorry for Asensio because nobody can have made as many sub-appearances as him, surely, in the whole history of the game. Why can't he go to a game, go to a team where he's like to start games? But he's really good at coming off a bench and being dangerous and scoring. That finish last night was an amazing finish.
Yeah, the precision of the finish was great. The revival of Rashford is I think it's great, Barry, isn't it? But it's quite incredible, really. I'm never sure if a player means to bounce a ball over a keeper with that finish. But who were we crediting yesterday? Martinelli for that assist. Maybe he's good enough to mean it. But I did not see Rashford just being this good when he moved.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere yesterday. I'm not sure where it was. Are we over-egging the Rashford pudding? Has he been as good as people are saying, or is he just achieving par now, Rashford par, having failed to make any kind of impression at Manchester United and apparently spat his dummy? And I was wondering, but he clearly is playing very, very well. And I do think he meant that finish. But I'm in magnanimous mood this week. I gave Martinelli the benefit of the doubt today. I'm giving Rashford the benefit of the doubt, and I would have given Tonali the benefit of the doubt until he actually said he didn't mean to score. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to say he meant it.
I suppose, look, you've watched every minute probably of Rashford, Dan, since he got there, and Asensio. So, give us your review.
Yeah, just two real high-level players. I think, we talk about the recruitment. It's not the most inventive recruitment in the world, is it? They're two players that are very well known, but they've just come in and taken on board what Emery wants. And I actually think what they've done is Villa were quite stodgy, a bit bitty in the league this season. But these two high-quality players coming in, I think it's given the fans a bit of a lift. I think it gave the players a bit of a lift. I actually think it gave Unai Emery a bit of a lift as well. I think he was getting very frustrated with Villa's inconsistencies before January, and in the last month or so, or the last kind of month of games, it all just seems to have clicked for Villa now. They've got this array of exciting options. They've got a really, really deep squad. If you look at some of the players that didn't even come on last night, the depth that Villa have now in every single department is right up there in terms of Premier League squads. So Villa are bringing, Onana into the game. It was a £50 million signing. They're bringing Asensio into games. Sometimes Rashford's come off the bench. Marlon's barely played, and he's come on and scored last night. Suddenly everyone's become fit again at the same time, and that's come at the same time as having these exciting new players. And finally this season, Villa have just firmed up and started to learn how to keep clean sheets as well. And I think the good thing is that at the moment that they're in multiple competitions still. Emery will be able to rotate, and he'll be able to keep everyone happy, and he's picking the right teams for the right games. I was slightly concerned with Mings not playing last night, but Torres just fitted in and was absolutely brilliant as well. I'd put Villa's kind of new defensive steelness down to Tyrone Mings being in the team, but it was the same last night with Pau Torres there, and they've got a couple of players that just completely fly under the radar, but Boubacar Kamara is one of the best sixes in Europe. He's so good. Villa are looking to get him tied down because he's only got a year and a half or 2 years left on his contract now, and he'd improve a lot of real top level teams. Boubacar Kamara, he was probably man of the match last night without even having one of his best games for Villa. That's how good he is.
What chance do you give Villa against PSG next week, Wilson?
I mean, I'd say PSG are favourites. I think that's fairly obvious, but they've got a chance. 20% chance, maybe 22% chance. 22%. So less of a chance than Tonali's being a goal, which we'll get to in a minute. No. Less of a chance than he meant that as a shot. That's a different stat entirely.
Yes. No. Good point. Well made. Thank you for correcting me.
You're welcome.
We're gonna do the penalty. The penalty was absolutely ludicrous. The Jacob Ramsey. But how is that not a penalty? I don't understand.
So this is the one where he did a couple of step overs, and then
was brought down by Jack Hinchelwood.
Did we all think? I mean, I sort of didn't mind it wasn't given, but maybe I just wasn't concentrating. I certainly wasn't. I wasn't wearing Villa spectacles. What is the idea that his legs just gave way before he reached Hinchelwood?
I mean, the match centre was quite confusing again. I can't remember exactly what it said, but the match centre was on top form again with the written review of what happened. I've not spoken to anyone who thinks that wasn't a penalty, although I have mainly spoke to Villa fans, so that might explain it.
Yeah, you've spoken to Gordon Cowans, Peter With,
Nigel Kennedy. Nigel Spink.
Nigel Kennedy.
Prince William.
Prince William.
4 seasons. Yeah, exactly. I mean, did everyone else think it was a blatant penalty? I mean, was with Barry?
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it didn't matter ultimately. Yeah. But yeah, I was baffled again by...
No, I don't care now.
I better watch it again. All right, that'll do for part one. Part two will begin at St James's Park. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Newcastle beat Brentford 2-1. They might have Man City in their sights. 50 points, fifth place, one behind City in fourth. Let's start with the Sandro Tonali winner, which I did write, if he meant it, it's the greatest goal of all time, or perhaps the greatest goal from a tight angle. And then he said afterwards, Barry, it was 70% cross, 30% shot, which means nothing, right? That is a totally meaningless thing to say. It's either a shot or a cross, isn't it?
Well, he said it was a little bit lucky.
Yeah.
At the final whistle, Thomas Frank went over to him and asked him, did you mean that? And he looked a little, sort of smiled sheepishly. So I don't think he meant to shoot. I did at the time, but if you're a player who does that, you shouldn't be modest or coy. You should say, I meant to do that, whether you did or not.
Sorry, I disagree on this idea that it's either a cross or a shot. I think it's entirely legitimate to smash a ball into a dangerous area. And you think if somebody's making a run across the near post, he gets a little touch, it's really dangerous as a cross. If a keeper's drifted off his line or he's got his feet slightly caught and it goes in, that's also good. I think you tend to see that more with in-swinging crosses to the back post. You think, if I arc this in, maybe it sort of just drifts in the far post, maybe somebody gets a touch on it. I think something can be both a cross and a shot at the same time. I think it's a false distinction.
I understand what you're saying with one of those in-swing crosses to the far post, or perhaps if you are, a bit closer to the goal or a bit less of an angle, like if you're just smashing in the box. But I think this is just too. I agree with Barry. Because the way it moved and the way he struck it, it did look like he meant it, But I think you can't make the distinction from where he is personally. But
no, I think you can. And I think Eddie Howe said he'd seen him sort of practicing that. So I don't think he's necessarily practicing to score, but he's sort of thinking, if I'm in this position, right, I'm not sure what's in the box. I've got defenders pursuing me. If I can, and it's a difficult thing to do with the ball's moving, he's moving, to catch it cleanly, and rather than doing what you instinctively do, which would be to sort of hook your foot around and try and get a round swing on it, but to just sort of smash it into that near post area, I think that's entirely legitimate as a cross shot. It's unusual, but that's good that he's found something new to do in the game.
What wasn't Eddie Howe joking when he said, I've seen him practice that?
Eddie Howe has never made a joke.
This is the start of his Edinburgh warm-up, isn't it?
Yeah.
The most earnest manager in the Premier League. He doesn't know the meaning of the word joke.
Is this thing on?
Hello, Cleveland. Cross come shots. What are they on about? Who remembers Peanuts? Joe Hart called it a throbby wobbler on Match of the Day, which I did enjoy as a phrase. Whether I agree with him that it's a throbby wobbler, because I thought it actually stayed quite straight. I didn't think it was throbby or wobbly personally. But it could have gone either way this game.
I'd rather not dwell on Joe Hart's throbby wobbler.
You're probably right.
I think his point was that it sort of, I mean, it clearly didn't. I don't think it did, but it didn't dip as you'd expect. I think it sort of slightly, I don't think it sort of took off. I think it just kept going at a trajectory you wouldn't expect. So I know what he means. It was a ball without that natural arcing spin you'd expect from a cross. So I think that's what he meant, and that's why I think that's why the keeper gets slightly low.
Okay.
Whereas if he'd stood a bit taller, he probably would have got proper hands to it.
Without labouring the point, for me, a sort of a throbby wobbler is what a knuckleball looks like. When it's like those newfangled footballs that are going all over the place.
But I think this was slightly knucklebally.
I don't think we've analysed a goal ever with this much detail.
Can I just add? I'm a big fan of Joe Hart as a pundit. I think he's very, very good.
Yes, I agree with you. Excellent, and very good goalkeeper insight, which you don't often get. Could have gone either way though, Barry. Ethan Pinnock hit the post, didn't he? So close to another classic from him. There were the Brentford penalty shouts as well. Sounds like a terrible band, doesn't it?
Yeah, I thought Newcastle were a little bit lucky. I think Brentford should have had 2 penalties. The first for the Bruno shove on Mikkel Damsgaard, and then later another Bruno challenge on Damsgaard again, neither given. Thomas Frank said afterwards he thought the first one was a penalty and the second wasn't. I would disagree with him. I thought the second one was even more of a penalty than the first one, but I think both should have been given. Ethan Pinnock, as you say, hit the post with a header. And for quite a lot of this game, it looked as if Brentford's players had been sent out to play in their trainers. They kept slipping and falling over. There was an Ethan Pinnock slip that allowed Alexander Isak through, where Newcastle probably should have scored. I think they did score, but it was ruled out. But if Isak had played Harvey Barnes in earlier, they would have scored. But it was a good win for Newcastle, but I do think they were a bit fortunate.
Isak missed a host of chances in the first half. He missed so many chances. Obviously got one just before half time. And I think him and Jacob Murphy are the deadliest duo in the Premier League this season in the terms of linking up for goals. I think that's right now, Jacob Murphy and Alexander Isak. So that's a interesting tidbit there.
It is, yes. Not a tidbit I predicted at the start of the season. Although we don't have that category, do we? Maybe we should introduce it next season. Your tidbits of 2025, 26.
Probably wobblers.
Yeah, okay, see, right. Man City 2, Leicester 0. Real quick start from City. Dan and Jack Grealish scoring his first goal since December 2023. He hadn't scored in 26, which tells you he hasn't played much, has it? He said he was devastated not to play in the FA Cup quarter-final. Obviously really moving as well. He said, look, my little brother passed away 25 years ago today. It's always a hard day for the family. He was 4 years old when his brother Keelan died in April 2000, just 9 months due to sudden infant death syndrome. So I suppose on that, which is the most important part, Danny, it's just a keen reminder that footballers have lives. And whenever we're watching all these people run around doing whatever they're doing, we can't spend every single time thinking, I wonder how they're all feeling about certain things. But it's just a good reminder that these are just human beings who have other things in their lives while they're playing this game.
Yeah, look, everyone analyses Jack Grealish's life. Jack Grealish is football. He lives his life in that way. But I know the Grealish family quite well, and they're a lovely, lovely family. And Jack Grealish is included in that they couldn't do enough for people. That acts of kindness that Jack and his family do. I've never seen a footballer do so much for people. So I always like to see him do well, and I was chuffed that he scored last night. A player like Jack Grealish should never be going 26 games without a goal, but he's had a lot of injuries over the last few years. Every time he gets his rhythm back, he seems to get injured. He spends a lot of time on the bench. I've always thought he's a quite a rhythmic player, a player that needs to be playing every week if you're to see him at his best. And lo and behold, the season that did happen, he was a big part of Manchester City winning the treble. I think he needs to leave in the summer. I think he needs to go and rebuild his career somewhere else. And I think him and City will part ways in the summer. But just great to see him score last night. Interesting to see him play centrally as well. He had a couple of good games for England at the start of the season, playing as a central player as well. He played centrally for Man City last night. I think he had another game last year as well where he played central. I just think that is his best position. He's such a fun footballer to watch on his day, and I just hope towards the end of the season now he can just kickstart things for him, because he hasn't started a league game in 2025, and a player of Jack Grealish's quality that shouldn't be happening.
Where do you see him, Wilson? Where's the perfect place for Jack Grealish to go?
I mean, you'd like him to sort of become the player, or return to being the player he was at Villa, to have a bit more freedom that he's been given at City. I think actually, he in the treble season, he was really important to him. I think he played really well that season, and maybe was I think people were so frustrated that he wasn't playing with the freedom that we'd seen him play with at Villa that maybe his contribution to that was slightly underestimated. So where does he go? I mean, the problem is all these players always end up at Tottenham, and that's never good for anybody. but I mean, it's hard to, because of the age he is, it's hard to see him going to a. I mean, I guess maybe something like Forest would think, for a Champions League campaign, if Forest qualify for that, he gives them greater depth, he gives them extra quality. Maybe he wouldn't cost that much because of his age, because I think it's fairly evidently coming to the end at City. So maybe he could sort of be a quite different type of player to what Forest already have, but a useful option for them.
Quite nice to see him in the same team as Jota Silva, since they sort of look the same, and they could sort of.
Oh, that's true. They could share an Alice band. They could pass. How they pass the captain's armband. They could pass the captain's Alice band.
If one got booked, one could pretend it was the other one. Mistaken identity, like the Alessi twins in Neighbours. They could both accidentally sleep with Paul Robinson. All these things could happen, couldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's such an array of sort of late 80s, early 90s references, like McColgan, the Alessis. What was the other one? That was another utterly obscure.
How are we going to get new younger listeners? How are we going to get them?
I've gone again. I'm 39 and I've gone.
Dan, do some stuff for the kids in the next bit, if you would. We're getting desperate here. Barry, look, no Haaland. Mamouche played down the middle. He scored the second. Obviously, it was got a helping hand from Hermansen, the Leicester goal. But he does. I think he's sort of taken to the Premier League really well, really quickly, and I think it'll be quite interesting to see him have this run while Haaland is out.
Yeah, he looks the real deal. A lot of players who come to City take quite a long time to bed in. He hasn't. I thought it was interesting last night. City just repeatedly kept trying to score that textbook City goal where someone plays a weighted ball to the byline and someone else pulls it back across the penalty area, and then player number 3 shoots. City just seemed to be doing that for the entire game, and Leicester had no answers for them. Yeah, Marmoush looks like he'll be absolutely fine with City.
Oscar Bob was back, which was nice. Pep was in the stands, so Kevin Keegan was the technical area guy. That was good. Elm says Leicester City have kept 2 Premier League clean sheets since the World Cup. Blimey. 7 league games without scoring, 1 win in 15, and that was against Spurs when they were peak Dr. Tottenham. It does seem now, Wilson, like replacing Steve Cooper with Ruben Nistelrooy was mad, even if Steve Cooper wasn't doing well.
There's 2 separate parts to that, though, aren't there? So replacing Steve Cooper, I think, was not mad, given not necessarily his results or even how they were playing, but just the mood around the place. Everything was so negative. Replacing him with Ruud van Nistelrooy was clearly a desperate error that they haven't been able to defend since. I mean, even that first game when they got the win against West Ham, they were absolutely battered first half, got away with that. They've looked doomed really since Cooper went, but I as I say, I don't think you can necessarily extrapolate from that getting rid of Cooper was the wrong thing to do. It was just appointing Van Nistelrooy was the wrong thing to do. But I mean, it's there was a stat on Match of the Day last night, wasn't there, that after 30 games, the combined points total of the promoted sides is 47, I think it was, which is 8 lower than it's ever been before after 30 games. And that's a huge concern for all of football, that gulf is so vast. That's why I don't say this because I don't like Leeds or Sheffield United, but I really hope Burnley go up, because I just want to see what happens when a team who has most teams who go up from the Championship do so by attacking and playing good possession football, very progressive football. Burnley are not doing that. Their defensive record is incredible this season. And I think there's some dispute as to whether they're doing that with an eye on the Premier League or whether it's just because of the players they've got. But I'd like to see how that functions in the Premier League. That if you come up as a great defensive side, is that actually a better way of doing things than coming up as a free scoring side who then has to adjust how they play when they get to the higher level?
Man City fans staged a protest for the first 9 minutes of this game. 3 fan groups called for supporters attending the game to remain in the concourse for the first 9 minutes to represent how the now 9 official resale partners, following last week's deal with Viagogo, asked about it afterwards. Pep kind of backed the fans. He said, all I can say is that I and we need them. We need the support because we're playing a lot. But who am I to not agree with the people expressing themselves? I can have my opinion, but that is not relevant. No, he didn't come out and say, I think the fans are right to protest. But he wants the fans in the stadium. I don't know, Barry, how you feel on the, protests, walking from pub to ground before game, not going into the ground before the 9th minute. I didn't see how effective it was, but how effective do you think that may be?
A lot of fans didn't get the memo. Most fans didn't get the memo. It's kind of half-arsed like most fan protests, but I suppose we're talking about it. Pep was talking about it, so it's better than nothing.
It's a huge problem fans have, though, right? How do they protest? I understand that the logic is, the way you protest is to vote with your feet and not turn up. But the problem is that a lot of people going to games already are, and this is going to sound like a disparaging term, I don't mean it as such, are tourist fans, people who don't go regularly, people who've paid an enormous amount for their ticket and for their flights and their hotel and transport and food and everything. And I can understand why they're thinking, well, I've ended up paying sort of 400 quid for this ticket. I'm not going to give up a tenth of this to make a point. And clubs actually I'm not saying this is necessarily true of City, but I think other clubs' executives have been pretty explicit that they see the season ticket holders as a problem because they don't spend as much money as everybody else. If the season tickets vacate the space, all you're doing is saying, oh, well, bring in the tourist fans. And it's a massive problem football's got. The pricing out of the regular fan. And I think it's incredibly short-termist from the clubs because clearly the experience you're then selling is much worse because the fans who generate atmosphere, the fans who go every week, the fans who make the club what it is, are being diluted by the tourists who are coming to see the sort of whole Premier League experience. So
you sort of need a way. You need to have a way where like both things can exist, right? And it's really interesting living in Australia and like seeing how much fans here care about their team, right? And if you're a Liverpool fan, you get out of bed at 2 a.m, every Saturday or Sunday night to watch your team. Like, this is real commitment to a football club, whoever it may be, right? And so if you do get the chance to then spend a lot of money to fly over to see 1 or 2 games, that's a legitimate thing. You are absolutely right. Pricing out people, season ticket holders, and people who live locally, who bring the atmosphere and it is their routine and their reason, not their reason for being, but a huge part of their right. There must be a way of saying, we love our season ticket holders. This area is reserved for tourists, right? So that, surely there's a way to do that, given how big TV revenue is, and that gate receipts don't mean everything to big clubs.
Well, but they're meaning more and more because of PSR and because it looks like TV revenues have plateaued.
But I think a lot of clubs would rather not have season ticket holders.
So then what do we do?
And that's the problem. They don't care what the season ticket holders think, because they would rather they weren't there or weren't there as season ticket holders.
But as Wilson says, it's so obviously short-termist and stupid that.
Yeah, but football club owners are largely short-termist and stupid.
There is no comeback to that. Yeah, it's a great shame, isn't it?
I mean, it's also what is Manchester City if it's not? Yeah, how is the sort of the soul or the DNA or whatever analogy you want to use of Manchester City? How is this club related to the club of the that won the FA Cup in 1904? It's by fans passing on that to other fans, to other people in their family, to friends. And there's something utterly tragic, I think, about institutions that have been going for 120, 150 years being sort of torn apart by neoliberal economics, as they are.
Yeah, I agree. Is there any way of fixing it?
No.
Okay. That's on a positive note to move to Bournemouth, Ipswich, I guess. I mean, I don't know how many tourists were there. Perhaps that's a good thing. Bournemouth 1, Ipswich 2. Look, we said yesterday, Dan, that Wolves win over West Ham meant the relegation places were decided. Does this change anything?
I think this is the start of Ipswich's Leicester City arc, whereby they go on a tremendous run at the end of the season and then win the Premier League next season. They've given themselves a glimmer. I would say it's a great result for them going to Bournemouth. I feared for them when they got pegged back and Bournemouth got one back, because Ipswich have thrown away so many games this season. And to be honest, I assumed the same thing would happen again, but they were resolute. They saw it out. You just do never know. I think it's very, very unlikely. I've been a little bit disappointed by Ipswich, because at the start of the season I thought with Kieran McKenna and the squad that they'd built that they might have enough to do a little bit better, but that they let too many tight games go just against them at the start of the season, and they've got progressively worse. Big game at the week, and if they can win again, that maybe they give themselves a chance, but it's a tall order.
I think if they win at the weekend, they definitely give themselves a chance. They host Wolves. If they win that 6-point gap, you got to give them a chance. I mean, I think Ipswich must be really regretting going into this season without a proper goalkeeper, because they've dropped so many points because of Mr. Muric when he was their first choice, and that's could cost them their place in the Premier League.
Kieran McKenna said the second goal was as good a goal as anyone has scored at Bournemouth against them this season. Then I suddenly thought, have there been a better goal scored by an opposition at the Vitality? And then I realised I couldn't remember any goals scored against Bournemouth at the Vitality. So I'm going to have to take Kieran.
I've remembered one.
Okay.
Salah scored a lovely curler against Bournemouth. I think it was Bournemouth.
Yeah, I was at that game. Great goal. Really good break, really good finish.
Was it better than this one? I must admit, I made a noise, Wilson, with how hard Liam Delap hit that. It was absolutely joyous.
Well, yeah, I think it's not a great goal, but it's a goal that sort of stirs something deep within. Just watching a man kick a ball, really, that was the joy of early Erling Haaland, was he just kicked the ball really hard. And there's something about the nets at Dortmund made a pleasant sort of chunking sound. Maybe it's because it was. I sort of first really watched them regularly during COVID when the Bundesliga came back before the Premier League came back. And so in an empty stadium, you heard that sort of chunk of the sort of metal bit at the bottom of the net lifting up and slapping down again.
Well, Delap affected that, didn't he? The net did go up and down, but I was just so happy. You're absolutely right.
What was the noise? I'd like to know what the noise was. You said you made a noise. What was the kind of noise?
Well, because I'm trying to think, at the time when I watched that goal, I was certainly looking after one, if not two children. So I've sort of got one eye on them, both on a play mat, and then I've got the games probably on a laptop, and there's a kids entertainer called Blippy. He's probably learning how to make, I don't know, a cardboard jellyfish.
Look, sorry, I know we said we wanted younger references, but maybe that's
Have I gone too far? Anyway, so I wasn't fully focused, and then I just saw it, and I was just like, oh, I think it was like a really guttural.
Oh, good noise.
Like, oh.
Good noise.
Yeah. As I said, a huge rainstorm is starting hitting the shed, just in case you can hear that too. Anyway, what of Bournemouth, Barry? You know, the greatest team in the world, as Barney called them, now no wins in 7, dropped to 10th. What do we make of it? Interestingly, they went on that brilliant run when they had all those injuries. They now have fewer injuries, and now they're having a tougher time.
Yeah, they've gone off a cliff, haven't they? They taken 1 point from the last 15 available, I think. Got knocked out of the cup. Their drop in form seems to have coincided with speculation linking Anthony Iraola with other jobs. I don't know if the two are in any way connected, but that certainly seems to be the case. It's a bit of a shame, really, because I was rather hopeful of seeing them qualify for the Champions League, because I think they do well in it, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen now.
I mean, it hasn't been a terrible decline. And I know they've drawn 2 and lost 5 of the last 7, which obviously is not good, but they haven't lost any of those by more than a single goal.
And they did play quite well in some of them. I mean, did they lose against Spurs in the game? They absolutely monstered them. Or was that
they drew 2-2, but yeah, I was at that game and they were much the better side. But they conceded 2 late goals against City in the cup. You know, they were ahead at half time. They conceded 2 in the second half. So I think it's probably just fatigue catching up with them. But after that Spurs game, Iraola was very frustrated, just sort of saying his team lacks game craft. They don't know how to get games over the line. And I mean, maybe there has been some disruption in the sort of morale of the squad with the talk around him, but he was angry enough after that game. I think you couldn't really doubt his commitment. I think he was very frustrated at what he saw as naivety from his side.
To be saying, Barry, they haven't fallen off a cliff. They've sort of rolled down a hill.
Abseiled. Yeah, they rolled down a hill in a bathtub. Last of the summer wine style. There's another one for the kids.
Let's go to St Mary's. Southampton 1, Palace 1. So close to their 3rd win of the season, and finally taking over the Derby County points record. Heartbreak.
Very focused on this because I'm doing Spurs Southampton on Sunday, and I was thinking, what on earth is to write about in this game? And I was thinking, at least I can write about Southampton's desperate struggle to surpass Derby. Then when they were 1-0 up after 90 minutes last night, I said, there's absolutely nothing to write about. So I was delighted that Palace equalised.
Well, given as well that, you know, Spurs will have all eyes on Eintracht Frankfurt, very possible. And also Spurs can give that to a team, can't they? That is where Southampton will get past Derby's 11 points. That Southampton's goal was beautiful, Dan. I thought, lovely move, lovely header from the enormous Paul Onuachu.
Yeah, I mean, they're just hopeless though, aren't they? Southampton and Leicester.
Well, okay.
Whenever I have to talk about them on a podcast, I get depressed and I don't support either team. Just 2 miserable football clubs who've had miserable seasons. A credit to the Southampton fans, because I read the other day that they haven't had an attendance below 30,000 all season, which surprised me, because you think people would have dropped off by now. I mean, I think they do drop off by the end of most games, but to go there week after week knowing you're probably not going to win. I've done that in the season when Villa got relegated on 17 points, and Southampton I don't think will get 17 points, so I can relate that to how miserable it is. It just must be horrible. But even last night, you're about to celebrate a win and you can't. Just sums it up, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that was the first time Crystal Palace have conceded a goal away from home since Gabriel Jesus' hat-trick for Arsenal on the 18th of December in the Carabao Cup. Mateta had his amazing contraption protecting his ear, and he hit the bar. And a nice moment for Mateus Franca. Not someone I'd heard of. Is it França or Franca?
I think it's França. He's Brazilian, isn't he?
França, yeah. 92nd minute, his first Palace goal. And Nketiah had a chance to win it late on. But yes, that'll do on that game. Well, that'll do for part 2 as well. Part 3, we'll look ahead to the weekend's game. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Chelsea play Spurs tonight. So you're probably listening to this after that game has happened. But if not, I hope it's exciting for you. Chelsea then go to Brentford, Spurs host to Southampton, as we've mentioned. It's the Manchester derby. Barry, where does this rank on exciting Manchester derbies, do you think?
I wouldn't say it's exciting. In a list of fixtures that is low on standout fixtures, I suppose Villa Forest is probably the best of them. It's certainly interesting, and United are at home. They have shown signs of life. I think what we're obliged to call the green shoots of recovery under Ruben Amorim. They weren't there in their game against Forest, but they'll probably lose. But you don't know with Manchester United. They're funny. They can raise their game against the better teams. It's difficult to know how this will go. It really is. United could stink the place out. City could stink the place out. They could both play well. I am fairly confident Amorim will do a decent job of whipping United into shape, but it's just how long it will take him is the question.
I suppose,
and will he be given the chance?
Yeah, I suppose we've mentioned the games that are actually. I mean, Ipswich Wolves has something riding on it. Villa Forest as well is interesting. Anything else? Palace Brighton, of course, is a derby game. Anything else take your?
Brentford Chelsea's kind of.
Yeah, true. Okay, so actually, it's not a bad fixture list, Wilson. After all that,
I mean, the problem is that this season's been weird in that. I think in many ways it's been quite a good season, but the problem is that the top side is, I mean, maybe they're sort of slightly running out of steam, but it's been much better than everybody else, and the bottom three have been much worse than everybody else. The middle 16 have all been very competitive, and games between them have been quite fun, but we do have a tendency to look at the top and the bottom of the table rather than at the race for 8.
Yeah, we need to recalibrate, don't we? Let's talk about Jose. He appeared to grab rival manager Okan Buruk's nose amid wild scenes.
What he appeared to.
This is the Guardian copy. I'm reading. At the end of Fenerbahce's 2-1 Turkish Cup defeat to bitter rivals Galatasaray, video footage showed Mourinho appearing here we go again, to pinch Buruk's nose following the final whistle, with the Galatasaray head coach falling to the pitch and holding his face in his hand.
He appeared to be left lying on his back.
I mean, it is, Dad going to the nose, going, got your nose, but just not quite as fun, isn't it, Barry? But I think what you're suggesting is the video footage tends to suggest that he really did grab another manager's nose, and that probably isn't on.
No, it's not on, and I presume he will be retrospectively punished for it. It's kind of a throwback to 2011 when he appeared to stick his finger in Tito Villanova's eye. And
I'd say he's grown, though, because I'd say that's the nose thing's not as bad as they are.
Yeah.
So he's grown as a human being since then.
Some self-improvement. He's been listening to those podcasts, hasn't he? He's been self-empowering himself or whatever.
They're 6 points behind Galatasaray. This was a cup quarter-final, wasn't it? They're 6 points behind Galatasaray in the league with 8 games to go. But Galatasaray lost their first game of the season at the weekend to Besiktas, who are managed by...
Oh, good question.
Oh, Ollie?
Ollie, yeah.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, yeah.
Ian Holloway. Wow, this is impressive.
So, I was at the Fenerbahce Rangers game in the Europa League, the game in Istanbul, and I've sort of come full circle on Mourinho. I'm back on liking him. He just doesn't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
He's genuinely he's very funny in press conferences. So it was the clip was quite widely shown on social media of. It was the second question in the press conference, and it was from a Turkish journalist. He was the only man in the room wearing a suit. He obviously has a degree of gravitas and self-importance. And the question went on and on and on and on. And Mourinho, about a minute in, just suddenly goes... and then goes, I'm really sorry. I've just been managing a game for 90 minutes. We lost. My head's all over the place. I can't take on this much information. And all this, the clip showed this. But then Mourinho carries on and says... Maybe we can meet up when I've got time so I can learn from you. And he's obviously being sarcastic. But fair play to this Turkish journalist. He goes, yeah, you free for lunch next Thursday? And at the end of the press conference, they were arranging which restaurant to meet in for lunch on the Thursday. So, they both end up coming out of it quite well. But no, Mourinho was really funny. But I'm not sure I'd want him as a manager of my club because he didn't really seem that focused on Fenerbahce, the fact that... I mean, they've got Dusan Tadic playing behind Edin Dzeko. You can't conceive how slow that is till you've seen it in action. Like
you want
Rangers
references
players,
for the kids? That doesn't help us.
Rangers like looking like they're just a team full of Billy Whizzers. Another one for the kids. But it's just astonishing how slow they were. Anyway, I sorry, I've drifted off. But Mourinho was a lot of fun. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, some quotes from Burke, whose nose was pinched. He said, "There was nothing between me and Mourinho. He pinched my nose from behind. There was a slight scratch. Of course, it wasn't a very nice or elegant thing to do. We expect managers to behave more appropriately in such situations. I won't exaggerate this issue, but it wasn't a classy move." Done. So there we are. Sam says, "Hi, Football Weekly team. Disappointed that no one picked up on Barry's splendid choice of words about Martinelli absolutely roasting Timothy Castagna, Tim Chestnuts. Really good. Very clever there. In the words of the intentional assist talk that led up to it, do you think Barry meant it? Cheers from Australia." Of course he meant it. And Hans George says, "Long-time listener, etc. Nice try saying the cup hasn't lost its magic in German. Unfortunately, the word you used for cup, Tasse, is reserved for coffee and teacups. Der Pokal hat seinen Zauber noch nicht verloren. Regards, Hans Georg." Thank you, Hans, for correcting me on that. And that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you. Can I wish, there's
Yes.
a friend of mine, Gavin, the crane driver, who I think you may have met.
Hi, Gavin.
He's running a half marathon on Sunday, and he wanted a shout out because he reckoned he'd be listening to this towards the end of his half marathon. Now, Gavin has set up his own WhatsApp group, includes all his friends, and I'm going to say running a half marathon is not that big a deal. The way he's going on about it, you would think he is going to conquer the Antarctic or doing one of those Kevin Sinfield, 100-mile runs in 50 days. But it's a half marathon, and I've already sponsored him 20 quid, so stop asking me for more money and good luck.
I would say, Barry, I agree with you that a half marathon isn't too much of a big deal. I could probably do one if you sent me out now. I'd be really sad by the end of it. I imagine Wilson could do it. Probably does it.
Look, I don't know undermine what Gavin is doing, but I want to do one in 78 minutes and 43 seconds.
Okay.
So,
Right.
If he's taking longer than that, he's let himself down.
Wow. Okay, that is quite.
I mean, I was 19 at the time, but
what I'm saying is, Barry, for you to say it's not too much suggests that you should sort of go and do one.
I could train and do one. It wouldn't be that big a deal. I regularly walk 13 miles a day,
Producer Joel says, yes. Let's sign you up. We'll sign Barry up. We'll raise money for something important and we'll sign you up to do it.
No, I set out just to belittle my friend Gavin's achievement, or if he achieves it, indeed, not to get myself roped into running a half marathon.
What I'm thinking is, though, Gavin is really struggling here. He's in mile 12. And the thought that we are getting you to commit to raise a lot of money for a great cause, and all the Football Weekly audience will come on board.
Can I do a bike ride or something instead?
No,
because I hate
Can't.
running. I hate running.
You just said about 3 minutes ago it's not that big a deal, and now you were trying to wheedle out doing a half marathon. It could be really good for you. Are you in?
No.
Okay, there we are. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wilson.
cheers, thank you.
Thank you, Baz.
Thanks.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Phil Maynard. We'll be back on Monday.
This is The Guardian.